Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody back to our afternoon session of our regular scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting out in your Somerset district. So Shiva, again, thanks for all your work, and Elaine for the hosting. I think we should also thank the nutrition staff, senior nutrition staff for the lunch that we had. It was very good, and we appreciate that. We have 5 items left, 5, 6, 7, 31, and 32. We have CDA staff sitting in the corner, and I'd love to get them out of here. No offense. Yeah.
We get that one.
For efficiency in government, so if the board would concur, I think we have to do item 32, and then we'll go to 5, 6, 7, and 31.
Very good. Item number 32 is from the Chief Administrative Officer of Community Development Agency, recommending the board adopt and authorize the chair to sign Resolution 208-2015 to create an interim traffic impact mitigation fee refund policy prior to the adoption and implementation of an updated TIM fee program and rate schedule.
Okay. And Mr. Stefani, I believe you're going to give us a little quick update briefing. And
Yeah, 1 minute. David Fonte, CDA. Back in September, we brought to the board a host of draft information relative to the capital improvement program and traffic impact mitigation fee update. That information generally showed TIM fees going down considerably in many districts. As part of that discussion, both the board and staff noted the concern that if fees are going down, folks out there looking to pull building permits might be inclined to hold off and not pull a building permit until the new fee is in place. So as to not discourage people from pulling building permits and going about their business, the board asked staff to put together an interim refund program or policy. We've done so, it's part of your packet, and we would essentially be offering refunds to folks that pay the fee between today and when that fee program is adopted. They would get a refund of the difference between the fees paid today and whatever the new fee is down the road. If there's any questions, we'd have to answer.
okay. Questions of staff? Yes.
Can we talk about the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so when we discussed this last time, the direction of the board was to have a policy to do the refund for non-residential, commercial. So under CB, we have included multiple family residential as part of non-residential development. So to me, we either have to do both, or we should stick with the true commercial and remove multiple family residential from the language.
And that's certainly the board's discretion to do so. Just to clarify why we included it in the draft language. In our world, multifamily is considered commercial development, so that's why it's included, but if you want to take it out, you're certainly free to do so.
Supervisor McLaughlin.
So, one of the things that we talked about during that discussion was that what % of the applications coming to the door are non-residential, about 2 to 4%. To go through all this commotion for this T deferral program for a handful of projects would be spending $1 to try to save time in some ways. But my understanding of the discussion was that, you know, if we're going to set up this program, and whether it's residential or commercial, that, you know, people are going to hold off on building granny flats or you know, if they're going to invest in residence or pull a permit for those things, that there should be equality. My understanding, maybe we just took something differently out of that meeting, that it was for residential and non-residential. I mean, the piece of we want businesses to invest, and do all those things, but at the same time it was equality with anyone pulling a permit. That if you wait till, I believe it's June when it's being implemented, you're going to get the modified rate. It's different in different TIMP zones. But between now and then, we don't want to discourage people from making that commitment, to pull in a permit now, because if you pull a permit in June or July, the work's not going to start until the following year. So really, it's not 6 months, it's more like a year. So I would really be supportive of for me, in my understanding, to apply this to both. Thank you, Chair.
Supervisor Ronaldo?
Well, if I understood that, what Supervisor Michalako just said, actually my recollection was closer to what Supervisor Frenzen said, that we had discussed not including the commercial. However, I do agree with staff that multifamily, they're connected. And I was okay with the resolution as it stood, but I just wanted to clarify my recollection was closer to what Supervisor Franklin said.
Yeah, I believe we talked about everything, obviously, it ended up in what Supervisor Friendly was saying, that it was more of a commercial adventure, and the definition of commercial and multifamily is more closely resembled than, I think what we parceled out was the residential piece. So, any other questions of David?
Dave, I know we talked about a couple different ones. One would be to go ahead, like, let's say I'm an applicant, whether it's, let's just say it, regardless of commercial or commercial, I pull a permit and I'm gonna pay X amount of dollars. Let's say it's $100. And under the program, the new fee's only gonna be $7. I'm gonna receive the balance, which would be $13 back, when the TIM fee program is finally implemented, correct? And we're gonna kind of keep it in escrow? Or what is the framework of how this policy, if we go forward, is gonna work in the example that I described?
So how it would work in practice, they would be due the refund of the delta between the current and the new fee.
Okay.
We would reserve a $300 administration fee to
Okay, all right.
cover county costs
All right.
relative to that, processing that refund. We've given ourselves up to 180 days to process that refund after the new TIM fee program is adopted. We hope to do the refunds much quicker than that, but things take time, so we want to give ourselves that 180 days, but promise those refunds will be processed within that time frame.
Would this be automatic, or would there be onus upon the applicant to have to go out there and chase their money?
It'd be automatic.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so sounds like there's a little bit of at least agreement that it was basically to be aimed at commercial. Okay, hang on a second, Chris. And the other discretionary piece is whether we're gonna classify multifamily as commercial, but was excluding residential. All good with that. Okay, before we get to that, we'll take public input.
I was just gonna mention that one of the public
Chris
speakers, Chris Payne, downstairs.
Yeah, we're out of the presentation part.
I got that figured out now.
And your
Hey,
hand.
take your hat off.
Okay. Should I stand up rather than sit down? It's a little informal. Okay. One of the speakers, I was there when you had this discussion, and she came up and said she was trying to get a house built. So that was residential. And she said if I knew that there was something going on, that would affect her, possibly affect her decision. I'm not sure, this is what I gathered from that meeting. Now, it's all clear to me that you all are speaking about something that could be done. That's a possibility, everybody here. I don't think staff is essentially saying that any one way is the best way or the way you ought to go. It's just a question of how you all feel. The numbers that we got yesterday were pretty eye-opening as to the effect. Certainly, what you do, though, is an indication of El Dorado County and what it's trying to do that's different from what it's done in the past. Lower TIM fees, okay? How are you gonna do it? The greatest effect over the maximum number of people. That's where you get the maximum input, which means add in residential, whether it's multifamily or single family, add it in. If it's a question now of they're gonna pay it no matter what, and they're gonna get it returned, what do you got to lose? You got $300 coming off for the fee to do it, but what you gain is, whatever it is showing your policy, your approach, the changes that you're trying to do, and anticipate of a better future. That's my comment.
Any other public comment? We'll bring it back. I think the discussion that we got into a little bit was zones 8, 2, and 3, pretty close to remaining the same. The other ones may take a major drop, so you start to get a little bit more crossing that line on more of a difference in whereas the commercial and multifamily was a consistent major drop. So again, I thought that sort of made a little bit of a, maybe a legal nexus challenge, or at least complicated the issue, and I think my memory is about as long as, never mind. I think that's why we settled on trying to stick to the commercial and
Okay.
then whether we classify the multifamily as that or not, so,
Well,
yes.
I'll support either one. I mean, if you wanna do residential and commercial, that's fine. If you wanna do commercial, I'll support whatever the board wants to do.
And I think
Okay.
to the thoughtful input by public, I seem to recall that kind of came up before too. What we need to do is we need to execute on the fee on the reduction. Nothing will speak louder than executing that crisply. And so, putting a sort of a nice Band-Aid on the bridge, I think is maybe cosmetic, and what we need to do is just get on the fees.
Well, and
That's my thought.
my opinion on this is, are we changing the fees for a better fair share? And if so, this new fee would be more representative of where we want to be. So following what Chris said, I think that would make sense, because it would show that we are being fairer and sooner than later.
Okay, give me a motion, let's go.
Can
I'll
I
move,
say,
Hang on.
just a couple of things. If you recall at yesterday's presentation, there was a mention that the commercial fees for a couple of different categories is going to go up for zones 8, 2, and 3. So keep that in mind. I checked with the staff, and if the fee goes up, we're not going to retroactively make them pay. This is only if they get a refund. Yeah, I wanted to make sure the language is.
Good point.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And then, because some of the rural areas, the fees are dropping so much, it may be very difficult for us as a board to explain someone who's doing a single-family residential why they have to pay so much more, up to $20,000 in some areas, than somebody if they did a multifamily residential in that area too. So just I still believe we should either do it for everybody or just keep it commercial and not drag the residential into it. But I'll let the board make their motion.
Somebody,
Please.
Supervisor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll tell you who's really gonna be upset, that if we were to pass this for all developments, somebody pulled a permit last year and paid $20,000, who could have pulled a permit next year if we approved my recommendation, they only have to pay $3,000, that's who's gonna be upset. With that, I will support equality, and I am gonna move the item, and I will move item B, implement a 10-fee interim refund policy for all development applicants.
Okay, motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second, any further discussion?
So that includes residential
Yes.
and commercial? Okay, good. And can we check with county council to make sure that's all okay?
They've already signed off on this agenda. It's here.
I just offered the disparate impact to residential that was discussed at the prior meeting, where the mom and pops can hold off and the developers will pass on the cost. And so the economic development engine that was your priority at the last discussion was the reason for staff bringing this forward this way.
But at the same time, the price of the home is only what the market will bear. So if you can simply just keep adding the price up, it's not gonna sell. So at the same time, they're gonna go right up to the line of what the market will bear. Whatever policies we implement, the market's only gonna bear whatever price point they're willing to accept.
And I think the discussion, at least what I'm hearing, is the sympathies for the mom and pop, obviously not for the developer. But you then run into disparate treatment if you don't treat them the same. And there's no way to single that out. So, we have a motion second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? My vote passes, so thank you very much. Don't be lost on the way home. There's no motorcycle tracks between here and there, but there's a few good trails.
I was gonna ask if $300 was enough to cover the staff time of this, but it sounds sufficient. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, we'll go back to item 5. Clerk?
Number 5 is from the Chief Administrative Officer and County Council recommending
Thanks, guys.
that Resolution 180-2013 and Resolution 250-2014 be retroactively amended to correct an administrative error in the language appearing to give credit to appointed department heads for service earned in another city or county.
Mr. Chairman, as the board is aware, the Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution amending elected officials' salaries. Unfortunately, the board member who presented that had obtained an resolution that contained some language that had been rescinded by the board in 2003. And so, when this was discovered, it was discovered because we're reviewing all the personnel rules and identifying what current personnel rules are. It was discovered that the error was made, and it was brought in, and the board changed it again. Unfortunately, that also contained the error, so here we are correcting what's known as a scrivener's error or a clerical error that had language in it that was from the 2003 resolution. So staff is asking you to simply express the intent of the board, that it was never the intent of the board to re-adopt language that had been rescinded by the board in 2003.
Questions,
So,
Larry?
well,
Supervisor
I
Allen.
had requested that the item get pulled, not because I'm not in support of the action, it's because that there was some questions about the administrative aspects of this. I think what we heard CAO Combs say was, when a revision was made to the resolution, for whatever reason, they did not use the most current version. They went back a version. They modified it, introducing a relic. They carried forward, it was never, to my knowledge, the intent to give credit or a raise for time served in another county. That was an error. I am confident that the action that we're taking today fixes that error. And there was some confusion. Understandably, there were a lot of resolutions involved in this process. When some folks looked at the Legistar or looked at the documents, they weren't sure that today we were bringing forward a new resolution. So I've got a couple of administrative confirmations that I would like from staff. The resolution that was part of the agenda package that doesn't have a signature on it is the new resolution. It is the correction. So I think that that was part of, while I wasn't present at taxpayers, that was part of what was documented as being a concern. So we are correcting the administrative error to my satisfaction in this new resolution. Also, there was a question about why there wasn't a blue routing sheet, and this just, in my first year on the board here, when we do and when we don't use a blue routing sheet, if you could explain that. I think that there was also a question about the notification period. I don't mean the notification of this agenda item, but a certain number of days on changing a salary item. If you could address those, if you could confirm that in fact we have a new resolution that does contain the most current and was adjusted based on the appropriate base, the correct resolution, I would appreciate that. And outside of that, I don't know if anybody else intended to pull this item, and I'm sure we will hear from the public, but I'm ready to support or motion to approve this, because I believe that it corrects the error.
Okay, Mr. Chair, you want to answer those, and then we'll...
First of all, the resolution that's in front of you is the correct resolution. Council has drafted that and it is appropriate. With regard to the blue routing sheet, as I understand it, and all I do is sign them, send something to council. This was initiated in council's office. And then your third item was?
The third item was, there was a concern whether or not
The
changing
20
salary and necessitated a longer notification. And in this case, we're actually removing a provision that would reduce the salary.
Well, it isn't, the fact is, you are not acting on a salary at all. You are correcting a clerical error. If you were in fact acting on a salary, you probably couldn't take this action today because you cannot lower the salary of an elected official during the term of office.
It has to be on the
This is
four-year
the
ballot.
correction of a clerical error. And it's made clear by the fact that during the discussion in the initial action, when it was brought to the board by a board member, and in the second action, when the correction was made, all discussion was regarding the payment for services in another entity. No discussion was had with regard to prior services. I'm sorry, I messed that up. All discussion was with regard to the years of service, not prior service.
Right.
So it's clear that the intent of the board members present at that time was focused only on that one section and not on this line that was in this old resolution. And that's why staff is comfortable presenting it to you and asking you to confirm that in fact that was an error. There was no intent of the board to change that language.
Supervisor Frenson?
Great. Larry, thank you for the explanation. I read the resolution and everything looks good. The part that we have a problem with, it's crossed off. So if we approve that resolution today, are we going to keep the resolution as it is with the crossed off section? And is that something that's a normal way that we deal with resolutions? I have never seen a resolution with crossed off sections.
It's done as a delineation for the board's consideration. A correct resolution will be generated for the signatures.
So then this is going to take me to my next question. When I look at the resolution number 180-2013 and 235-2014, the way I understand the numbering is done, the portion after the dash shows that what year the resolution got into effect. So if somebody has this resolution from 2013 and 2014 and they're looking at the old copy and now we're changing it, keeping it the same number even though it's new from 2015, wouldn't that cause confusion? Wouldn't it be cleaner to just give it a new resolution number? I don't know what we're up to, -2015, correct that and kind of make it be a clear cut.
I'm going to defer to the expert on that issue.
There are a couple of different ways you could do that. I mean, the way that I understand this item, the way that it's written, is that the departments are asking that those resolutions be amended. And I don't know, it's not asking that a new number be assigned. But I agree with Larry that if they want to put, the intent was to make a new resolution to supersede those, then that would be one other way to do that. My understanding of how this is written is they're asking us to amend 180-2013 and 235-2014.
So my question is, if somebody has the same resolution number, a printout of it from 2-3 years ago, and now you're changing the content, wouldn't that cause confusion?
It may, I would not disagree with that.
But is it not true that there are other circumstances where there are revision histories with with many documents, and you must make sure you have the most current dated document? I mean, I think that might exist in a lot of
Not with
areas.
the resolutions and ordinances.
If I might, I would comment that that's one of the reasons that it's essential when an item is being processed to come to the board, that it go through the court and to council for review to make sure it is the most current document.
Okay, hang on, Chris.
There's absolutely no legal prohibition for, preparing the new, giving it a new number. There's plenty of confusion to go around, rather than have, more to see if this would reduce that issue. It is very frequent for amended legal documents to be, not properly researched. It's a Law Clerk 101. But if that would be the board's pleasure, we can certainly bring it back.
Supervisor Michelato?
Thank you, Chair. I want to parcel out the process, how we could ever, however we get resolutions to the fundamental issue of what's our policy here. CAO, we're talking about longevity, aren't we? Is that what we're talking about here? Longevity pay?
Yes.
Yes, we're talking about longevity pay. And I thought this was settled a while back.
Actually, let me correct the yes I just gave you. Yes, it's the resolution in which longevity pay is. It is the line that states that longevity is, including longevity, is counted
Is
time
what?
with other governmental agencies.
Previous
Time
fees.
with other governmental agencies is counted in longevity.
Credit.
And you're giving credit for that. And the board's intent, starting in 2003, was that for elected officials, that was not, well, for everyone,
Yeah.
that was not counted.
That's correct.
And unfortunately, it slipped back in when a resolution was presented to the board in error, and now it is being removed.
Okay, so let me boil away the front of the discussion about longevity. If we have an opening for an appointed department head, different people apply. We look at their qualifications, what they've done, we interview them, and we hire them on their merits. Longevity is that not only above and beyond the work that you do, but being here at the county of El Dorado, there's institutional knowledge that you learn over time, which becomes an asset to the county. Like, for instance, was mentioned earlier, Jim Wasner, who was in code enforcement. His institutional knowledge of the county and all these different things, you can't put a value on that. And longevity is to compensate him for that knowledge, above and beyond the work they do, okay? And the decision point of, do we pay people longevity for institutional knowledge in another jurisdiction, is contrary to that. You know, the discussions that I had been a part of, that was reaffirmed, that we paid longevity, appointed, elected, employee, whatever the case may be, for time you've served as a member, not a member, an employee of this county. And I want to be sure that what we are doing under 5 is consistent with that. If it's not, then I think we should revisit this issue again. As far as going back in time about what slipped through the cracks, what's done is done, what happened, happened. I mean, some of the language in our MOUs, it looks like Greek hieroglyphics. I mean, sorting it out in nuances, and, you know, the problem is in some of the languages is sometimes one word can change the complexion of an item. And whatever happened, happened. I think what's happening today is we are reaffirming this policy decision. I want to make sure that I am understanding this from an ideological standpoint of how we're dealing with longevity. CAO, am I?
Yes, you are changing the resolution to correct the error that will result in the resolution only dealing with time in this county.
Okay. So, the second part of the question is, let's say somebody had been being paid for a period of time for longevity out of county. How are we going to deal with that?
There is no one in this county, I'm going to say, and hopefully, thank you. There is no one in this county currently being paid under that provision you're deleting because it was deleted in 2003. And there is no action has been taken under this change in wording that was enacted in error in 2003.
CAO, thank you.
Which is consistent with, it was not an intentional act.
Right.
If it had been an intentional act, most likely payroll would have been engaged and longevity would have been paid. So we're just correcting the problem.
The administrative clerical error.
Right.
And let me ask a follow-up to this, and I think that, let's say somebody starts as a sand truck driver, and 5 years later they move up to supervisor, and another 5 years later they work their way up the county org chart, and they become a department head. They're gonna get longevity for the time you spend as a sand truck driver, which is not the height of the org chart, but it's down there, but it's time in the county.
Whatever the contract.
And I think that it's important that we retain our employees over time. And I think that this longevity program encourages that. Thank you.
So,
So do we
decide if we were to?
As far as
Changing
the actual
numbers?
policy itself,
As far as changing the policy?
okay, well, public comment, then we'll bring it back to board.
Okay. This is the correct time for me to speak.
I don't know, it depends what you're saying.
Yes.
Depends
What
what
you're
you're
saying,
saying.
Diamond Springs. I'm speaking on item 5. The Taxpayers Association, I saw the letter that was sent and attached to this item. If you went through and made those paragraphs like checklist, you took it off of consent and you brought it up for discussion. You're doing that right now, and all this is being recorded. The second thing is, back to the blue routing slip. The blue routing slip is an indication that a particular item has been transmitted to county counsel's office for their review and a signature sign-off. So if there isn't a blue routing slip that's been executed and put into an attachment of the item is suspect, because administratively, somebody hasn't followed what our normal course and policy is administratively. So that's clear. So that was one of the things that the taxpayers noted. The second thing, because it's not a change in your policy, even though Supervisor Mick had talked about that policy, the question of the 21 days notice then, so there's no change in policy. So all we're trying to do then is get it taken care of, which is what Supervisor Ranelli has spoken to. Maybe we can take care of this today. Let me just say the second part after the blue routing slip. Whenever you have a document, a resolution, you expect to see it in as an attachment without any lineouts. You may have another attachment that is the markup, which is kind of really good, because then you could compare the final version versus the marked up version. And as we know, Word does that. All you have to do is print it out the correct way, and you get one without markups. I don't believe, unless Supervisor Ranelli, was that available in the packet for today's action, an unmarked up final version, so that you guys could execute it knowing this is what we're going to have? What are you showing me?
I showed, this is, no, there's a marked up of the error, and there is a new resolution. That is the clean copy that you just described.
Okay.
And I identify it because it has yet to receive the chairperson's signature, because this board has not taken action on it.
Correct.
Which is where we are today.
Yes.
In this matter.
Right,
So
I'm
I
saying
think,
this is,
I think by having it off and discussed, off of consent and discussed, is part of what we wanted. And I, without reiterating on the other items that I just said, I believe the fact that you have a unmarked, ready to execute attachment here, that is one of the things we wanted to have at the taxpayers, or one of the taxpayers' issues. Did you want to speak?
Well, it's with a new number.
Well, this is the question that CAA has spoken to, whether or not it appropriately deserves a new number. Back to the question of clarity. Certainly, if you had a new number, it would be a lot clearer that it isn't one of the prior documents, which gets confusing as to what action you take.
Yeah, without a new number, who knows what document to use?
But the notion of that the new number is not necessary, is what they're
Well-
saying, because of the fact that the clarity has been brought at this meeting, that is that number that was approved, corrected, the item, the document corrected, is the action that was taken, right? Okay.
That may be for the people here, but the general public won't know anything about that.
We're done, I'm done. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. So, I think that this policy platform about appointing department heads and employees is pretty straightforward. Where it got gray, or sticky if you will, was electeds. Do electeds get longevity pay? I am technically a county employee. And I don't know if we ever sort this out. I know that item 5 talks about give credit to appointed department heads for services in our county city. obviously we're clearing that up. But this has come up about electeds. And secondarily, if you worked in the county for 10 years and you became an elected official, would you get longevity pay for that 10 years? And I think you would, because you were employed at that time. But there, I'd like you to answer the piece about elected officials. Do they or do they not get longevity pay for time and service as an elected official in this county? I'd like an answer to that, because I'm still...
Pursuant to the resolution that was adopted by the board, the elected officials get longevity pay for time they served in this county. So if they were sand truck drivers, you put it earlier, and then got elected to an office in this county, they would get longevity pay if they were within that range that's stated in the resolution.
But that longevity pay wouldn't continue to go up over time during their time of service as an elected official.
Yes, it would.
Yes, it would.
They
It
are
would.
employees of the county.
And that's not what's before us today.
But that
We
is
want
not
to discuss
what you're saying.
benefits, that's another.
No, but I just want to understand this,
Yes.
it's still great. So elected officials do or do not get,
They do,
they do get longevity pay.
they do.
They do.
Thank you, Chair.
Supervisor Frenzen and Supervisor Novosel.
Okay. So when we change a document, we gotta be able to go and backtrack it. I have done programming for many years. Even if I checked in the source code and I wanted to change my comment, just add, one little thing, I would get a new revision for that source code. So it's just a good practice to keep the numbers, that you don't change something unless you come up with a new revision number. If you want to put -1 to this one, make it such that this is a different document. So I would like to make a motion when Supervisor Novosel is done.
Yeah, and I was just gonna make a point, because it took me a while to find the new resolution in here. It's under 6A, which is like 4 or 5 documents into that, where I was confused on finding it. I had a hard time finding it.
Good.
Right.
So, but when you get there, there's no resolution number on it, and there's obviously no signature because I never passed it. So, I think that leaves it open to whatever we want. There's nothing in there, it's blank. So, I think we have the document, we just have to decide what we want to number.
Okay.
I have a very important question for council. And this came up before. So, under the elections code, if you advertise for elected office, it comes with the terms of it. Here's the pay, here's what you get, here's the terms, okay? And all the candidates equally, whoever they are, if they win their election, would receive that. And it occurred to me when I read this that if you have candidate X who has eclipsed longevity pay, qualifying for it, you have candidate Y who doesn't, you have 2 different pays for the same position. I need you to clarify this for me, because technically, if candidate X wins, they're gonna get more money than if candidate Y, and the election code is very
Fifth
clear.
year, though. I mean,
That's correct.
Yeah, it takes so many years of service to get to it, so you'd have to get 5 years in to get any of it, so that immediately it's not 2 different rates of pay.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, let's say I served a certain number of years, and I'm running for county supervisor again. Well, if I win, I'm gonna get county supervisor plus longevity pay. But my opponent, who's never been a county supervisor, if they win, they'll get county supervisor pay. We're giving 2 different pay raises here. The election code is very clear about this.
Those are different. There is the salary, and then there are additional benefits. This board opted for the additional benefit of longevity. The salary is a base salary.
But when I read this, I thought it said,
Salaries are identical. You may, because you've been longer in the county, starting as street sweeper, be entitled to longevity, but the base pay for supervisor salary would be X.
I'm going by memory here, but if I remember right, we talked about one word changes things. If I remember correctly, and I would look into this, it said compensation, not salary, so that's it, thank you, Chair.
And again, that gets into sort of the separate subject matter that I think we want to go down today.
I would like to clarify something, because I suspect Supervisor
Frenzen.
Supervisor Fenton is going to make a motion. I would suggest if you want a new number, that you make a motion to adopt the resolution assigning it the most current number. The clerk assigns the number, you would give it the next number in line.
I would attach that to the file after the fact with signatures, that's the normal.
So that way it's not gonna come back to the board.
It would not come back to the
So we're not gonna have it on the consent calendar at the next meeting with the new number?
No, that's the board.
It'll have a number just in case you want it.
Yes,
And I,
yeah, I'm okay with that motion.
and, you know, I come from a long pattern of revision history, and so I have no problem with the assignment of a different number. I just want to make sure that it's clear that this action corrects the problem.
Right, right.
I mean, 44,000 hearts in a radar, for instance, you have to change every single time the thing changes or the system will be defunct.
That's what happened.
So what I'm hearing is, I think we need a motion that will take us back to the proper language and then assign a new number and assign that task to the clerk of the board.
What do you mean the proper language? The language is proper.
Well, the proper language is proper, but it takes us back to the language that was in 2003 and deletes the improper
I
language.
think we're talking about adopting staff's recommendation with the clerk assigning the most current number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's as the item says, retroactively amended to correct administrative error.
Yep.
I thought Supervisor Finley made that motion.
Yes.
Don't you got?
That's what I have.
And I thought Supervisor Rinaldi
Second.
That was my question, I didn't know.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimously approved.
Good.
Take that one off the list.
All right.
Okay.
Item 6 and
Item number
7, I
6.
believe, they're on along the same lines.
I'll read them together, I'll do
Okay.
6 first. 6 is the CAO's Office of Criminal Board recommended the board consider final passage of ordinance 539, which relates to Chapter 2, Section 03020 of the Dorado County Ordinance Code. And number 7 is the board recommending the board adopt and authorize the chair to sign resolution 203/2015 that will establish the 2016 Board of Supervisors regular meeting calendar. I think
The board discussed item 6 a couple of weeks ago, and again, the intent here is to consolidate items into meetings essentially twice a month, although it might be a little more than that sometimes. And then when we have special meetings, or when we have long presentations, or something that would normally occupy quite a bit of time during a regular meeting, such as we had today, they can be done on an alternate Tuesday. And that would provide a little more efficiency for the board, and that's why staff recommended the adoption of this ordinance, and why we are recommending the calendar as proposed in item number 7. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And the reason for the ordinance change is because the ordinance currently spells out meeting every Tuesday.
That's
And doesn't allow for flexibility, so what we're saying in the item is to have flexibility and to rearrange topics of meetings to be more efficient, in my book. We get staff that sits here for hours while we go through public presentations, because they always tend to take longer, and this was all a discussion, some tied to strategic planning and other discussions we've had about being more efficient and effective in our meetings. So whether we end up still being 4 Tuesdays a month, maybe in a different manner, but the idea was to allow us to be more efficient and not have staff sitting and running up the taxpayer dollars. Supervisor Novosel, then Supervisor Nicolai.
Well, I just like to say that I'm all for efficiency in our government. And this, I believe, makes us more efficient government by allowing us to have 2 times a week rather than every week. There are times when we're meeting for 2 or 3 hours. We've had meetings where we've only had a 2 or 3 hour meeting, which is inefficient. And if it's not something that has to be on there, then why are we meeting every week? It's just an inefficient system. I appreciate our CAO's effort at getting us to a more efficient way of doing business, and I appreciate that. I'm looking at the ordinance right now, and it takes it out, It says times and locations of all regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meetings shall be set. We're still setting meetings. We're still gonna have a schedule, a yearly schedule that the public can see. It will be listed on our website. We'll be able to understand when those regularly scheduled meetings are. We have tapes that come in that the public can see and view if we do decide to schedule a special meeting. So there is plenty of notification. I think this is a really good way to go. I think it takes us down the road of becoming that efficient government that we really want to be. So I would say I'm very much favor it.
Supervisor Michaelacco?
Thank you, Chair. So, in almost 3 years now, I've learned that the material comes kind of in ebbs and flows. There isn't a steady stream of material that comes weeks to week. It seems that we get close to the fiscal year, it really ramps up. I would encourage maybe filling in a few days right before the end of the fiscal year. It seems to be one of our busier times. But above and beyond that, I agree with the CNEO. There's really two types of items. Like for today, we had, receiving file and presentations and so forth, and there's what we call nuts and bolts issues. Like we just dealt with a nut and bolt issue over this resolution and ordinance and pay and all this. If we were to take these meetings every other week with our true nut and bolt issues, dealing with on consent the contracts, the endless contracts that we do, and all those things, and kind of in between in those off weeks, how are the receiving files? How are the presentations? It would be easier on our staff. Mixing the two up, you got agenda review for both of those. Agenda review for a bunch of presentations, I don't even know if you really need to do it. And it makes more sense. So we're not having half the meetings. I think what we're doing is we're kind of parceling out the types of things that we hear. And there was one meeting in particular that I'll never forget, where we had a presentation and then we had a nut and bolt meeting. And it was, we were having a presentation of the 4-H and we were having a nut and bolt meeting of the medical marijuana. And I have to tell you, it was,
Nuts and bolts.
it was, it was something that if we had a policy in place where we had presentations on the, and I think that we can have presentations on these days, from 4-H, and we have it from the Farm Bureau, and the first 5 comes in and presents, the chamber, have those on those off weeks. It doesn't have to be so formal. It's a lot more relaxed, it's not as draining, if you will. And focus our energies on those every other week of our really meat and potato, nut and bolts issues. What I call the business of our government. I'd be supportive of that, but I just want to be clear that we're not necessarily dark every other week. That we are going to be kind of filling in. Again, I would encourage a few more meetings right before the end of the fiscal year. But other than that, there are times that we come in here Tuesdays and it's very, very light. Very, very light. It tends to be at the end of the year, and toward the end of summer it gets a little light. But March does kind of ramp up for some reason. I don't know what it is, April, March. So, thank you, Chair.
I just wanted to clarify, we do already have in this next year's schedule 4 budget, regularly scheduled budget hearing dates.
As we do every year.
Yeah, but they're already in
That's
there.
right.
You're saying beyond those, you need to.
Oh, no, I'm saying that revolving around that draft budget here and there just seems to be.
I'll interject just a little bit there. June is typically the month when you have budget workshops. But we do have 3 meetings scheduled for the month of June. So we did put an extra one, just for those purposes. A lot of contracts end at that end of the fiscal year, they're written that way, so staff and departments really like.
Jim, you're a step ahead of me. You're a step ahead of me on this.
Yeah.
June does have 3
He
right
does.
there, so,
That's right.
yeah.
Supervisor Rowland?
I kind of looked at this differently than maybe others, I don't know. The first question I asked myself is this action highly unusual? And I seem to recall early last year at a CSAC new supervisor training session where some of us were present, sitting at different tables, with probably 35 to 50 other supervisors from different counties. And the question by the moderator was asked, how many have 2 meetings a month? And almost the whole room's arms went up. I think that he also may have asked a question about how many hours the meetings were. And when it got down, so when he noticed that not everybody's hand went up, eventually we got to El Dorado County, there was, we're the ones that are highly unusual here. Okay, that's one thought. Last year when Sue and I joined the board, I presume that the prior board had adopted a similar calendar coming into this year, into this calendar year. And, we inherited that calendar without much, at least not much thought on my part. And then, I think early February, we had an agenda item from our long-range planning that put forth a series of priorities, like 12 to 15 priorities. One category had subcategories, so that's why I say 12 to 15. And this board decided on the matter of the Oak Woodland and Bio policy that we would have as many meetings as it was necessary to do the job that we were elected to do. And I believe following that, we had 9 special meetings, well publicized, following all of the Brown Act and open meeting rules. We did what was necessary in spite of the calendar. And I expect that this group is going to do what is necessary in spite of the calendar to take care of our business. So it doesn't seem highly unusual. We want to make ourselves more efficient. We made some improvements to the way the agenda is organized. I thought that was very, very helpful for the public, having spent many, many years of studying the board agenda because I had to report out on Monday morning at 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m. We made some helpful improvements. I believe that we will do whatever is necessary, and I support the action.
Yeah. Did you? Okay.
Supervisor Frenzy.
So I think we discussed this the last, 3 weeks ago, this item was in front of us. And I was the only one who is having an issue with this. I believe that we already have the flexibility with the current language in our ordinance to set up the schedule the way we want it to be. We just don't have meetings on those dates. As far as the public, I think I was very clear that if you have meetings every week, the public can count on accessibility in the meetings versus remembering, which other weeks the board is going to meet. Supervisor Novosel made a comment that sometimes the meetings are 2-3 hours and then we could combine it with the week after. I shared with you that sometimes there are a lot of material to read. I spend the weekends to read it, but sometimes I need time to analyze and noodle it. That's the word that we use, because these are complex issues that needs time. And the more items we have there, the harder it's for me to absorb everything and be prepared. So I think I'm just the minority on this board. As I voted last time on the changing of the ordinance, I would not support it. One other item, when we were talking about, we can use those Tuesdays, always have a meeting. So am I going to let my assistant schedule other meetings on the Tuesdays for me, or am I going to keep it open? So it would be cleaner to just kind of plan for that whole thing. If we don't have a meeting, it's going to be a pleasant surprise. We can get other things done, but overall, again, I'm the minority, so I'm just going to let the board decide.
Supervisor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. And this isn't this great deal. It's a win-win. Public input. Who's elected petition to the public board meeting just about every Tuesday. And people come to public comment, they talk about a whole bunch of different things. There won't be as much public comment. I know that we've talked about having better transparency. I'm going to call it chippiness. And what happens is that with less meetings, we're gonna have longer agendas, and I'll tell you what, right between 3 and 5 o'clock, we'll start getting chippy. And it's not terribly productive. And along with that is that some of the issues are terribly complicated, and some of these issues, the only time we have a chance to ask questions, or to ferret things out, or to discuss our views with our colleagues, because everyone on this board is very respectful of the Brown Act, and very respectful, that we only discuss things openly in a forum like this, is that there's a little bit of this. Come on, let's go, we got a lot to do, we got a lot to do. I just want to be frank and say that if we're willing to accept this schedule, we have to also be willing to accept that we're gonna have some long days. Okay, and that, you know, we have to be tolerant of the fact that it's gonna be tough. And also, I discussed this, and I'm not totally sold on this, but Larry, I want to circle around back to you because, you know, so I've got the draft agenda, and clearly it's much less. Draft calendar, yeah. There's a lot more open Tuesdays than the previous one. We talked about taking presentations and things like that and putting them on another Tuesday, or are we going to substitute, for instance, in the month of April, we've got the 5th and the 19th. Are we going to make the 5th presentation day and the 19th business days, or are we going to make the 5th and 19th business days and the 12th a presentation day? What is your, I'm trying to ferret out what you're proposing under this parceling out our presentation days.
Well, first of all, nothing has been set, and it'll be up to the board how this works, but conceptually, I would suggest that we will attempt to schedule what you would call nuts and bolts items on your set calendar days.
Okay, these right here.
And if you have presentation, if you have a light nuts and bolts day, and there's a presentation sitting out there needing to be made, we'll probably schedule it.
Okay, all right.
But if
Okay.
there is a heavy nuts and bolts day, then we'll schedule a special meeting of the board the following Tuesday and have it done that day, or some other day of the week when it's convenient for the board. There's no, you don't have to have a meeting only on Tuesdays, you can have them any day. And so we might consult with the board and say, are you available next Thursday? We're gonna have a presentation day. And then we would put on a calendar that says we've got a presentation day on that day. But again, we're gonna manage this in accordance with how many items are flowing through the system to come to the board. But if you have a heavy, really heavy agenda, and which I think is gonna be unusual, but let's just make up a story and say.
We have about 2 a year that are very,
We've
very heavy.
got an agenda that looks like it's a 9-hour agenda. We're probably gonna split those items and go to 2 days. So, but again, that's all gonna be done in conjunction with the chair and keeping the board members in the loop in terms of discussion of how we're gonna do this. And that will probably be done at a board meeting publicly under CAO report or something like that. And a discussion of what the board would like to do with this heavy agenda coming up, or we have 13 presentations sitting out there and that kind of thing.
Could I make just an observation or a suggestion, if you will, is that about one Thursday a month, we have transit at 1 for those who are on the transit board, we have transportation at 2. That morning set of those Thursdays are very opportunistic days. Most of the board is here on those days. It's a good presentation day, just an observation. The second point to that is the Supervisor Frenson's point. So let's say, Larry, to your point, okay, so we're in agenda review, and we've got a cornucopia of nuts and bolts issues, and you know, we need to push off some of these presentations. The Supervisor Frenson's point, her assistant's got to set her schedule the same way mine sets mine and Brian sets hers. For an appointment, I'm anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks out, who knows? When we say, hey, let's just push this off for a week or two, that creates a challenge scheduling wise. You know, some kind of, I mean, we can't just leave every blank Tuesday on here open in anticipation of something that may or may not occur. That's a challenge there. You know, I think that if we come up with some kind of timeline, 3 weeks out, or maybe even for presentations Thursday morning from 9 to noon, we can cover a lot of presentations in that time. The board's here, we gotta be here anyways, most of us are on transportation, most of us are here in transit, but just an idea. I'll be glad to hear any other ideas anyone else has. I'm very open to this.
Hang on, Chris. I think the idea is to create some flexibility.
Okay.
And I think to institute some change. If it doesn't work out, we can change it back, but
Okay.
hearing how many boards do this, you guys have been represented in some of those boards.
I counted, there's 5 out of 58 that do it.
I've sat for 14 years, you sat for 12 years, we sit on the Transportation Commission, we meet once a month. This isn't rocket science. The best part we should dwell on is making sure we are getting good, effective information to our public. And obviously, they need to know then when they can come back to us. That other Tuesday or the other 2 Tuesdays, if we don't need them all the time, would be great days to study instead of spending all day Sunday studying your packet in preparation. And I think it gives us a chance to interface with staff more as well, because a lot of the questions we have are with staff that should be vetted there, not vetted at the day of a meeting to make it a 10-hour meeting.
You just stole my thunder, and thank you for doing it.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention something that I mentioned last time, which is that staff is going to work to try and get the agenda out earlier.
Right.
So that the board has more time to review the agenda. And that way you won't be getting it just a few days before the meeting, or a week before the meeting, so you have the opportunity to properly review the items and talk.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Based on this draft agenda, that would allow more ability to have it out sooner, correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Right. Supervisor Nowling and Supervisor Frenton.
Well, just like a separate bit to Supervisor Mick's point about longer meetings getting chippy. I watched 2014, so expectations set. I agree with Supervisor Chair Veerkamp's comments. Having more time on some of the more complex issues to meet with staff, for all of us to meet with staff, who tend to be competing for staff's time, starting on Thursday when documents really become available, final staff reports and like that. I think it gives us more time with staff so that the actual meeting has an opportunity, especially the more complicated ones, to be more productive, because we're not playing out our one-on-one discussions with staff on the days. And I believe that there is a way to more productively schedule Tuesdays with some uncertainty. Frankly, I will treat every Thursday as if it's a meeting. And if not, it'll give me those Tuesdays as a meeting day. It'll give me that critical time to make follow-up calls. Because I'm not sure about y'all, but like you, I think 2 to 6 weeks is a typical time to get an appointment, depending upon the urgency and things.
All right.
My challenge is making all the necessary follow-up phone calls that people ask for. And what would happen is, if there wasn't a board meeting on Tuesday, it's not a day off. It's going to be making those critical phone calls and having that critical contact. Because a lot of people who work for a living, they want those meetings after hours, and that's rarely in a conflict with our normal daily activities. So I see Tuesdays being an opportunity for more productivity, and I certainly think we could change it if it doesn't work.
So last time we talked about the turnaround time, and having the agenda published on a Tuesday, it's gonna kind of eat up our turnaround time if there is an issue. And I personally don't like addendums to the agenda. But legally, we have till Friday. So how many of those additional addendas are we gonna get? I would like to hear it, because I have one more.
I was going to make a smart comment and say, I'm
Say it again?
How many
How many would you like? They're totally under the control of the CEO as well as the chair.
And
You
if the
have that
board doesn't
control
want
already.
agenda, the only agenda that will show up is an absolute urgency, you've got to act on this.
Attendance is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah,
So-
they are an exception, and since I've been here, I don't think we've had that.
Mm.
Okay.
But in
I'm
any
writing my
case,
time down.
it
I'm
would
just
be my
kidding.
goal to get the, and I'm gonna have to work with the clerk on this, and obviously, I will also hear from the department heads, because we'll be backing up their time to be able to get things to the board. But my goal would be, for instance, to get the agenda out on not the Tuesday before the Tuesday meeting, but the Friday or the Monday before the Tuesday meeting, so that you've got more than a week, and you can use that Tuesday for meetings, you can use that Tuesday for review, whatever it is, so that you have a full week to meet with staff, follow up on items, whatever it is you need to do prior to the Tuesday meeting.
So you also mentioned that, yes, if we need additional meetings, we can just choose a Thursday or pick a different time. Just listening to that, why are we causing this overhead for your staff and also my assistant, for example, to go in there to figure out where I have the time free, or if it's an urgent matter that we gotta meet, to clear my calendar? So, I mean, I think we should stop talking about this and
It
just
was
let
only
her.
a suggestion, it's not written in stone, but that's the way things need to be done.
Nick, and then let's see if we get a public.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a recent example. We had Thanksgiving week, I went down south and I was gone. Then we had CSAC week, which was gone for 2 weeks. And then we came back the following Tuesday, which was week for this Timby thing. It was a very, very deep, complicated issue. That there were some things that came out of that, that for me, it's a lot of time on top of all the nuts and bolts stuff we have, and all the other things. It was a challenge for time, and I spent Sunday, and I had a cold, and didn't feel good, and just wanted to sleep and get better, but, you know, I plowed through it, went through all the information, but it was hard, it was very hard. And I think that having this type of schedule would allow a little bit more flexibility to go through. There's a lot of information. I mean, there are times I'm just like, oh my word, and you frankly don't feel like doing it. But it's my job. I think there's a reasonable expectation that people have of me, that I know what it is in front of me, and I don't let them down on there. So that's a recent example of where if we had a little bit more time between meetings, it would have allowed for that, to be able to find the time in that example to sort it out. And I've found that most answers can be, not most, a lot of answers can be found in the staff report, and then follow-ups needed with the department head on occasion, which for me is really less and less as and over time I think a lot of us will find that you really kind of understand things and understand operational questions, the types of contracts, but even, and I pride myself on having a good understanding of all the things that we do, but I still need that time. This would allow for that. I think it will give me some flexibility, and it's really hard. I've never been a good crash course guy, but I can do it. And Sunday night till midnight, I was crash coursing this stuff and was able to get there. So I thank you, Chair.
With this, I'll open up the public. Chris, I think your hand has been a couple times.
First of all, Chris Payne, Diamond Springs. I'm gonna have to leave possibly before you finish your, because I have to be back in class about 3. I thought we would go faster today, but it's been very informative. Back to the question. The clerk of the board essentially is here at your pleasure, and some of the changes that have been made in the agendas and how they're formatted have been very beneficial. You heard Supervisor Nally speak to that. Very beneficial because it's clear administratively things that departmentally are together now. You didn't have to go out and find them. So that's all good. The second part is that we're speaking about the calendar. The notion of the calendar here is there's implications. If you read the words that you used in your agenda today, just based on what's in here, the backup of which you're speaking to, the backup to this item, the question of policy, is strong. So therefore, having some input by us, by the Taxpayers Association of El Dorado County, related to what they would like you to do, it is all pertinent. And so to that end, I know that Bernie speak to the Taxpayers Association, but I was there yesterday, at the breakfast, and I heard the discussion, and essentially it was along these lines. If you go to, let's say, alternating weeks, somewhat as Supervisor Mick is explaining, in terms of the calendar, that doesn't mean that a day's meeting is going to be short. In fact, it most likely means that it's going to be longer. Why? Because you have less days. I understand, Supervisor Novosel, your situation. You live in Lake Tahoe, so anytime you come down here, that is a trip that you may not have to take if we went to this alternating Tuesday approach. Completely understandable, very practical. But as a public, I want certainty, whatever it might be. And you'll bring that no matter what. I'm sure we'll all figure it out after you take your action. But I don't know that changing your number 6, which is changing the ordinance itself, which obviously has to be done, that's why these two are together. I don't know what changing the ordinance is necessarily trying to make us more efficient and more effective. I think how you run the meeting, who's chairing it, and how you have staff integrated into it is really answer to whether you're efficient or effective. I worry about staff in going to the alternating Tuesdays as to their lead time and what they need in order to prepare and meet the obligation of providing it. You might say, hey, well, they're gonna have more time now because we're going to meet on an alternating Tuesday basis. No, not necessarily. In their schedule, sometimes a week off is bad news. Something needs to be taken care of. Maybe they didn't pick up on it earlier. Maybe they should have. But the bottom line is every Tuesday, from a staff perspective, is important. It's an opportunity to be agendized to get the action of the board done. I think you gotta think at it from a big picture perspective, not necessarily all of your individual needs, but more of how you work collectively. And also the CAO and the CIO office is critically important in this. And so I think, bottom line, that I would stick, after having thought this through, with the recommendation of the Taxpayers Association, which is stay the course, be more effective and efficient in what you can do on your Tuesday. Oh, let me just say, a short meeting on Tuesday is not bad, because essentially it gives you those additional hours that maybe you hadn't thought you were going to have to do the things that you can get done now that you didn't schedule. And so I think you can be effective in that way. Those are my thoughts. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Bernard Carlson, I think that you may well find the idea of what's going to happen to the staff is going to end up with some unintended consequences of them getting the work done. I've seen that kind of thing happen before, where it sounds good, but it doesn't work. And it's also going to confuse a lot of people of the public. You are here to represent the public. That's your job. And if you cut down the time to do that,
Thanks, Chris.
you know, we already have, I've been to a lot, well, I'm sorry, on the chemo, I haven't been making the board meetings, but I used to be there all the time. And there were a lot of times when we were there at 6, 7 o'clock, having every week. So what's gonna happen when you do that every other week? They're gonna be longer? How can you cover it all in meeting every other week? I don't see it.
Okay. Lori?
Yeah,
Lori Parlin?
yeah, Lori Farnan. I completely agree with what Chris said and Bernard said. I work, and my boss is kind enough to let me schedule Tuesdays off to be here. And when you guys pop up with one of those special Monday meetings, it really makes me unhappy because I can't be here. And so I miss out on things that are important, like yesterday I couldn't be there. So the certainty, I heard certainty for the public. These are our meetings, you're here for the public. some of those 10-hour meetings. I've been in most of the 10-hour meetings, actually. It happens. These are important things. These things affect our lives, you know, as long as we stay living in this county. We've talked about it before. There's no reason that you can't maintain the Tuesday calendar and designate a certain Tuesday of the month for only presentations. You know, we have talked about that before. I know we have publicly at a meeting. Just say the third Tuesday of the month is going to be for presentations only, or something like that, or I don't know. But work within the certainty. The public needs certainty. I kept hearing efficiency, and I can't remember the quote, but I was at, years ago, not that long, but a reg reform meeting, or CDAC, where Mike Chikazi came and gave a presentation about the Brown Act. And I remember there was something, I can't remember exactly how it went, but, you know, government and being open and transparent isn't always efficient. It's just the way it is. You've got to make sure that the public is involved. And I'm really concerned that you guys sound like you have good intentions for wanting to do this, but it just, you know, doesn't seem like Bernard said, I think there's going to be unintended consequences. And there's no reason you can't stick to that certainty for the people. We know Tuesday's the day to come to board meetings. We know it. And gosh, yeah, when one gets out early, I actually am like, yay, let's go to lunch. So, or maybe I can catch one of you afterward when we break early. That's nice too. So, I really would ask that you not do this. Or if you want to change the calendar, could we have a workshop, and I mean the kind where we actually sit and talk back and forth. Board meetings are so one-directional, they're not, I like workshops where we get to talk back and forth and brainstorm. Please don't do it on a Monday, if you could do or in the evening. And again, I do know that we've talked about, for the last couple of years, having the important, big decision things in the evening, and I'd rather have you guys talk about that than cutting back on your days at your meeting. I think that was all I had.
Sue?
Taylor, I really would, I support all the comments that have been made, and I would, you know, consistency is important. It's important for your staff, it's for everybody that schedules. The minute you take those Tuesdays off the agenda, they're gonna fill in with other stuff, and you're gonna have stuff that comes up, and it's gonna be a nightmare trying to reschedule into those Tuesdays. Staff is at your will, and I was actually there when the meetings were a lot more random, and you never knew where things were gonna be on the agenda, when it was gonna happen. And it was actually Jack Sweeney, when it was becoming so chaotic, cleaned up the schedule so that we had the staff coming in the morning on all the items, and then they'd do some presentations, and we pushed the land issues out to later in the day when more people could come, and those were what people were mostly concerned about. So the schedule you have now, actually, I think is kind of efficient, because your staff's all there to discuss these things that are important for staff to get and get you the information, and they all take off and go back to work. It's almost like, I wish you would keep the Tuesdays. If you want to reduce how many Tuesdays that you have these type of meetings, maybe use the other Tuesdays for workshops or special meetings or presentations or different things, but keep everything on Tuesdays. When you're doing these things on Mondays, those are horrible. You know, we can't come to those things on Monday, and you've been doing a lot of big, huge things on Mondays. It just seems
Because we
like.
got a meeting every Tuesday, so,
Right.
anyway. We're here.
Well, maybe do less presentations. You don't need, maybe get more down to the nuts and bolts.
I'm gonna go a little bit back and forth.
Okay.
The people are the ones requesting the presentations. How do you turn down an Eagle Scout that has done his Eagle Scout work? And a lot of them are people's kids, so
Well,
I know this sounds simple.
Farm Bureau.
Go ahead, Sue.
Well, I've seen the.
4-H.
I've seen the
Okay.
same group come and present to you like 5 or 6 times, the same presentation. And it was somebody that wants, a lot of them come because they want funding. And so they come and ask you basically, look at all the great things we're doing, we need some funding, thank you, if you ever have something, we'd be glad to, be there. Scouts, that's great, I'm sure it didn't take more than a few minutes. I know the he's a great kid. Those were great things, he worked, how many of those do you have? It's just, I'm not saying take out presentations, but not, the senior elderly group, they were there twice a month, I think. There's just, there are good things. I'm gonna go back to my points, I just jogged down some things and getting off topic, so. I just feel like the public's having a hard time, if you can't schedule when you're gonna try to be here at these meetings, you don't get to participate. Everybody knows you're on Tuesdays. So many people actually are scheduling their video time. We are being watched all over the county on the video, and people kind of start gearing their stuff. All your other meetings are geared around these meetings being on Tuesday. You know, if city council wanted to be involved with you, everything, you guys have so many more meetings than this meeting. But yet, so many of your meetings revolve because this is on Tuesdays, you have a tight schedule. And you take the Tuesday out, and then you start allowing random days to be developed for future meetings. It's just kind of chaotic, I think. The other thing I was gonna mention, I remember when budget hearings were months. You'd have departments come forward, and I don't know, why they've been, I don't know if our county's working so well that you don't need the budget hearings as much as they used to be. But there'd be months, and that's all you had. You didn't have anything else on the agenda except the budget hearings.
No one attends them anymore, but they used to, with,
Well, I meant,
much
maybe
more than
that's
that.
why. Yeah, or
Public
you're,
getting involved, and they shouldn't be.
well, and I don't know if we're getting so much information anymore on those meetings. I don't know. But, the flexibility. So I would just ask, if you're gonna do this, keep the meetings on the Tuesdays. Don't have random side meetings. It's really hard to keep track of. I don't know if that's being done intentionally, maybe not. And then, I noticed on the agenda, it had, you only have one meeting in July, by the way, on your calendar. And I thought maybe in June, you have a budget meeting on a Monday and a Wednesday, but in May, you have no meetings on the 10th and the 24th. You know, maybe have your budget meetings on those Tuesdays and not have a Monday and Wednesday meeting. So I guess I basically asked, one year we really asked the board not to put so much heavy stuff on during Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they honored that. It was awesome. We didn't have any huge development projects. You know, this year it's been horrible. I mean, really, the whole general plan overhaul, the CIP, everything, I think you've waited this last 2 months to put on the agenda, and there's nobody here. They're all trying to deal with their holidays. So I would ask that maybe there's a memo somewhere. Can we really not put all this heavy stuff on between Thanksgiving and Christmas and give people time? Maybe use those months to do all your presentations. I don't know, but I would say I appreciate the schedule that was crafted by the last board and how they aligned it more. And maybe it's drifted from some of that, but it was really clear that the staff items were in the morning. And there really wasn't so much on the presentation. It was just the staff time, get them back to work, and then do the land use issues later in the evening. And knowing that those, we watch for those on Tuesdays. We let a lot of people know what's going on Tuesdays. And to put us on it's been a nightmare trying to keep track of where all your other meetings might come up with. It's just a little scary.
Okay. Anything else? John?
Not a chance.
Just think.
I've got 25 years experience.
John, you come to every meeting, so. Anyway, I'll pull it back to the board. I think obviously all points well taken. I don't think there's any intent to limit Tuesdays. Tuesdays are the priority day because that's obviously what we're used to. This would allow some flexibility. And if I may, I'd like to say one more thing. The board is here for policy decisions. Micromanaging and getting into operations every day or every minute of the week is not what a policy board is about. Boards I've been on, boards I've been affiliated with, that's how they operate. Boards that you're referring to, Supervisor Rinaldi, that were pulled in this CSAC conference, that's how they operate. I think that's how we want to operate. We may not do it perfectly as we try to downscale and reshift, but that's what we should be doing. And then we create policy. Staff creates operation and deals with operations and solve those issues. The budget in the charter says who is in charge of the budget. If that person doesn't do the budget to our satisfaction, we get rid of that person. There's not been a lot of accountability in past models, other than board members putting their thumb on things and directing different things. And that's the wrong way to run government, my opinion. The public that I talk to, and there are a lot of people out there that I ask of, groups I talk to, and they think our Tuesday meetings are a joke. That's why they don't come, because they're not efficient, they're not run on time schedules, and we have done a lot to try to get tighter on that. And I just think we need to continue to tweak that till we can find the right one that will work for us, thus allowing staff, and I've talked to staff as well, that they can get their jobs done when they need to do and be more prepared for the items as they come forward. We and the public have more time to get with staff because the items all come from staff, most of them. So, again, we need to focus on policies, and those policies, if right, like our budget policies we adopted, then hold the feet to the fire of those people that are supposed to follow through with those policies.
Fred, may I ask you, do you direct staff, or is the staff bringing direction to the board?
We direct our CAO. He or she then direct staff. Technically, we've got one employee, and that's our CAO. Yes, there's other electeds that we have to interface with, which makes it a little tougher. Other counties may not have as many electeds, but they all have to interface, but they need to go through that person, because if they don't, how does he coordinate? How does he evaluate? How does he make sure that those items are working in the right context? If any one of us five is running to them and telling them what to do, it's like going down to the fire station when the fire chief is given an order to his captain, and then me, as the fire chief, then walking right through the engine bay and saying, Sue, wash the fire truck. The captain's laid you out for the day. That's totally inefficient.
So I would like to say is that we are a policy board, and perhaps that is going to be an unintentional
Consequence, but
consequence, is that we act as a policy board. Doesn't mean that staff comes to us and asks us. It means we look at we're on the high elevation, we look at policies, we decide what policies need to be changed, and we tell staff, through our CAO, what those changes need to be at a policy level. And that is different than what I've been seeing and hearing, at least in the last year before I took office. I saw a lot of people talking a lot lower level and trying to confuse each other. It became very difficult to watch some of these meetings. And what I'm very happy to hear is that we're all willing, at least that's what I'm getting the impression, is that all five of us are willing to come in and start talking at a policy level how we get this county moving in the right direction. And I think we have a really great interim CAO that understands that. He's trying to correct that problem we're having of getting too low down. We should be at that level in policy, and that is a quicker meeting. That's not an 8-hour meeting per se every week. And I'm not talking to you just for a second here. What I'm trying to do is explain that this is where we need to go. And at Tuesdays, by the way, if we have two set Tuesdays a month, we can sit there, and I think I would recommend to all of us, is that we look at our Tuesdays as being a board day, whether we're in a board meeting or not. That we spend our Tuesdays planning on being in the board, and whether we have the meeting or not, it's just scheduled. And that way we don't have that concern. And if we have the ability to need a special meeting, and the public understands it's going to be on a Tuesday, it's not going to be on a Monday or Thursday, we're going to try to make it on that Tuesday.
That's fair.
I think that takes care of a lot of stones there.
Mr. Chairman,
I
I'd
want
like
to
to
take
qualify something, if I might, that Ms. Taylor asked. Policy is set by the board. When you're dealing though with a technical area, whether it's TIM fees or whether it's legal language, staff brings to the board options and says, you can do it this way or you can do it this way. the board makes the policy, chooses which way they're gonna do it. It may be written or defined by staff for the board to consider that the board sets policy, then staff follows that policy.
I guess my question, because I've been doing this for years, and I don't see the board actually directing me to go do something. And then you going to staff, compiling those options, and then bringing it back. I haven't seen that dialogue transfer like that.
Maybe this is the chance.
Well,
If I might, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think you actually have seen that a lot, and I think you've been at the meetings, at least since I've been here, particularly in the land use area. Staff brings to the board a lot of discussion, and then says, give us some direction, and the board says, we want you to develop this. And they go away and they develop that and bring it back to the
you
board.
again started with staff though, that's my point, it starts with staff.
Well,
Staff's the ones who do the work.
the issues that are developed are 90+% from some staff knowledge that there is an issue there. That's where it comes from. Whether it's from a letter from the state to the welfare department saying, we got a new program you've got to do. And so staff will then bring it to the board and say, here's a new program we've got to do, here's the options, which ones do you want to do? That's where it has to come from. But there are times that the board says, do this. Come up with some options here, and we do. And that's, the ultimate decision is always the board's. The policy is set by the board. I'm sorry, Supervisor.
You know, we each have different backgrounds. We each run the way we go over our material, we do our public, taking care of our constituents. The issues that are in our district, each take care of it differently. So we need to set up the whatever the calendar is, and I appreciate it if my fellow supervisors don't tell me how I should be leaving my Tuesdays open and consider it a board meeting or do my follow-up calls. I'm coming from private sector. At the end of the day, I'm going to get everything done. So I'm very calendar driven. So we set, those dates, and then I'll take care of whatever needs to be done just to get it done. Okay, yes, but I think there is so much that we can go into this. We should set the ordinance, we should set the calendar, and just move forward and get it done. I mean, whatever the challenges, we just have to deal with it with the way that we operate.
Supervisor McLaughlin?
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, you said that department heads all go to the CAO. The ACO is very important as well, the role they play, because the CAO can't be everywhere all the time. A lot of the agenda items, how does it get on the agenda? The department head, or the CAO or council, would depend on what the item is, and then it goes through the process, and the clerk of the board, and they ferret it out, and Law and Justice or CDA. It has evolved over the time. Before consent calendars were just willy-nilly. Now we've kind of parceled it out into Law and Justice and those things, and that's been an improvement. So many different ways I can go on this, but it's not a perfect system. It's really not. But, one of the things that I was thinking about though is that with what I'm gonna call a little bit more compact schedules, there's two things that I did have a concern about that I think we should have some discussion about. One is that the ones we can't plan for, people pull items and consent on occasion. I don't pull a lot of items, on occasion I will. It's hard to schedule for that. It's hard to schedule someone's gonna pull item. The second one's closed session. There are times when we have one thing in closed session, times when we have 8 or 9. With these longer days, I don't know, some thoughts been given if we're just gonna absorb those in those days, or if we can parcel that out as well. I don't know, but just an observation, I'm sure we could, and I do wanna circle back to chipping this thing, though, and I tell you that, going up,
This is an example of it.
going up there every week and slugging it out on that dais, you get chippy, but not seeing you guys for a couple of weeks, I gotta say, I look forward to seeing you, and I think that having a break in between, I think it will solve that, because I really do miss you guys.
Let's make it every quarter.
I miss you too, Larry, just so you know. Robin, Jim, Bernie, I miss you too. And Sue,
Thanks.
and Lori, in some
All right,
way.
what's your pleasure, board? Or we get chippy,
Well,
We won't get chippy though, because
got a break.
I
we'll get a
support,
break.
I support the items 6 and 7. And I think that we have the opportunity to correct anything that's not working. And I think that we can try to make this work. If it clearly doesn't, we'll adjust. My motion is to support staff's recommendation on 6 and 7.
One second.
Yep.
Final
Thank you.
passage of the ordinance, and then the other is those schedules.
Point of clarification, Supervisor Rinaldi, is
Yes.
there a motion to approve both 6 and 7?
Weren't they bundled together? And we're discussing the two of them together?
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, any further discussion?
I'm gonna support the item, because the motion maker said, if this isn't working, we'll adjust. And I think that, this is kind of new, we'll see how it plays out, and we'll make adjustments if necessary. Thank you, Chair.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. I believe,
Item 81, sir.
31, that's item 31. All right.
All the chief, item number 31 is from the chief administrative officer, recommending the board consider receiving a report and status of transfer for the Diamond Springs Eldorado Fire District's development impact fee account. And number 2 is if the transfer, as ordered, has not been made, authorizing the litigation to be held for transfer.
Acting Assistant Chief Administrative Officer Mike Chikadze. I'll try to be brief, given that this has gone on longer than we anticipated. As to the status update, as of 10 minutes to 8 this morning, the transfer to Diamond Springs has not been made. There have been some discussion, some back and forth, but bottom line, the transfer was not made as of 10 to 8 this morning. And we are asking for the board to authorize the next step, if it becomes necessary. We will take every step to try to avoid having to pursue litigation, but this board has directed payment, this board has ordered payment, and to date, those steps by this board have not been sufficient to convince the Auditor Controller to make the payment. The next step is to the Superior Court, but as I said, we have had some discussion. The CAO's office and County Council will continue those discussions in the hopes that we can avoid having to take that next step, but we are here today asking that the board authorize that next step, the initiation of litigation if need be. Thank you.
Like in your discussion with the auditor, why is he refusing to do this?
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that it's, well, he hasn't accepted the opinion of County Council, which has been expressed that the order of the board that occurred in September was a lawful order, and that the payment was a lawful payment. After that September hearing, as I said last time, we became aware of the Walker decision, Walker versus City of San Clemente, and we discussed that in November. Different factual scenario, different appellate district, and quite frankly, it doesn't match up with the situation we have.
Pacific Legal doesn't
If-
agree with you.
Well, lawyers disagree all the time. I am not concerned about that, quite frankly. What I am concerned about is moving this matter forward one way or another. If Pacific Legal is correct, fantastic, we'll know. If Pacific Legal is wrong, we'll find out and we'll know. But in the meantime, we are wallowing around in uncertainty, and that payment is not being made to the district after we sit here today and listen to fire council after fire council, and then the Pioneer Fire District talk about the importance of the resources, the limitation of the resources, and here is a funding resource for a fire district that purchased a fire engine back in January of 2015 in reliance upon these development funds. It's their money.
That And I think you made a very important point in the last presentation that ties to their last approved CIP, not the unapproved CIPs that have been in limbo since 2011. The funds were limited to the past approved CIP prior to 2011 that they had accumulated under unchallenged. They have not been challenged on those fees since then. They haven't been challenged to this date, other than I think there is a current claim now been made.
There is a claim, and I would point out that, yes, repeatedly, this engine was designated within their CIPs. And although the board in 2011 didn't approve the CIP, the board did take action and did approve the fee. Not the fee requested, but did approve a fee.
And it's a percentage of the engine based on the piece that was attributed to new development as part of their study.
Yes. And I'm trying to avoid a whole debate about
I understand.
all the water and the details that we had in November, but I'm more than prepared to have that debate if we have to go there.
All right. Supervisor, Friends. Sorry.
You say no?
No, stop himself.
Because I stopped here. I
That's
looked
weird.
this way.
Remember, I'm on left.
No offensive.
So, it sounds like we have disagreement between different lawyers and attorneys. And this board is really stuck in between, okay, who is really right? So while we're going through that litigation, the taxpayers are the ones who are paying for this. And how long is it gonna take? And are we gonna be able to refund the Pioneer Fire Department if we go that direction? Because they need the money right now. So I would like to know exactly what we're looking at.
Diamond Springs, Eldorado.
Diamond Springs. Look at that.
Pioneer.
Sorry.
That's what you said. I knew what you, I was listening to what you meant. So,
You still understand.
Supervisor Friendly, the problem we have is we have an elected official, the Auditor Controller, has not accepted legal counsel from his counsel, county counsel, that the payment is authorized and legal. And the fire district, as a result, does not have access to their funds. Your board has given the auditor a lawful order to pay, and that was partially done so that it would give the auditor, I'll call it protection or cover, for making that payment.
Yeah, there's a
He
problem.
still refuses to pay. If the board simply accepts that and does not take this action today or at some future point, then the fire district simply is not going to get paid, because the auditor has decided he's not going to pay. And so it's my recommendation that you take this action. As Mr. Chikazi indicated, we will discuss with the auditor and try to convince him to pay. But if necessary, the only way to resolve it is to go into court and have our lawyer, county counsel, meet their lawyer, his lawyer, whoever that may be, or Pacific Legal Foundation, whoever comes to court, argue it out and have a court decide, and order the auditor to pay, or say to the board and to the fire district, you're not gonna get your money. Because you can't, as a board, you've done everything you can legally to compel the auditor to pay the fire district. Your next step is to have a judge order the auditor to pay the fire district. And that's all that can be done.
So I go back to my question, how long is this litigation gonna take typically? What the cost would be, and can the fire department get paid meanwhile?
No, the fire department cannot be paid unless the auditor is going to pay the fire department, which they've indicated he will not do. So there is no resolution to this unless either the auditor agrees to make the payment or a judge orders the auditor to make the payment. And how long it will take is dependent on how long litigation takes. And a judge could make the decision in a week. Then somebody might decide to appeal it. Who knows?
Cost, please.
I have no idea, ma'am. It could be $10,000, it could be $100,000. It's unfortunate that we're put in this position, but you have a fiduciary obligation to the fire district to try to get them their money. In reality, I believe the auditor has a fiduciary district to pay the money. He is refusing to carry that out.
So would it make sense, because right now we're looking at, one attorney saying one thing, the other attorney.
Actually, there is no attorney that's saying that this isn't legal. There's no attorney that has said this isn't legal.
Okay, so
The auditor made this determination on his own.
This board's not seen this board's not seen an opinion outside of that.
That's not true.
This board's not seen an opinion outside of,
I could say, I certainly have not seen any written legal opinion other than that from county council that said
Exactly.
it was lawful
Exactly.
to pay the claim. That's the only legal analysis I have seen. I have heard tell, and I had the auditor quote language from the Walker decision, but I can quote language from many decisions. It's the analysis that is the key, and the only legal analysis that has been provided to date is that of county council.
it's not,
Yes, sir.
So, because all I can assume is there is a difference of opinion when it comes to legal. So we have budget for outside consultant. Does it make sense before going, into this fight, inner fight, internal fight, I would call it, to find the specialty and get a second opinion from an outside counsel in the next week that comes back to the board?
still doesn't get the fire district paid, does it?
Right, but I just asked the question, if we go into litigation, the fire district is not going to get paid. So let's kind of get the expertise out there, people who are familiar with this field, and see what they say and what we're dealing with,
So you want a second opinion from our county council?
from an outside counsel.
I want to make it clear, you have a legal opinion from an expert. Your county council is an expert at governmental law. That is what she is trained in, has lots of experience in, and you pay her to do. So you do have a legal expert who is telling you, this case is a case where the payment is legal. Now, another attorney can come in and give you a different opinion. As I saw in Doonesbury once, the one attorney was going broke and said, what this town needs is another attorney. And then they both became rich. We can hire 5 attorneys and get 5 different opinions, depends on which one you want. Your county council is hired to give you an independent, professional, legal opinion on what is legal for the county of El Dorado to do. She has done that. And I am convinced she is correct. I've analyzed it from a layperson point of view with a few years of experience in government. And that, the Walker case does not apply to this case. I believe I spelled that out last time. There is no reason this payment hasn't been made. The fire district should be paid. The auditor is not carrying out his legal responsibilities. I am convinced that he is not going to do so unless a judge orders him to do so. So we could hire 3 or 4 attorneys to give you additional opinions, and he's still not going to do it because he doesn't think it's appropriate.
The only counter legal opinions as of this date are myself, concurred with Mike Chikatsi of my office and the Assistant County Administrator, and our Auditor Controller's legal opinion. Your board hired a county counsel to provide you, the board, legal opinions, and that's what I've done.
Right, I didn't ask for 3 or 4 or 5 other opinions. I asked specifically someone who has experience in this matter, and especially in this matter, to pay for a couple of hours to just get an opinion, a written opinion that can come back to this board. I don't think it's unreasonable to take that step. This is going to cost us a lot of money and a lot of friction, and we have to do everything in our power before we really go for this fight.
This is not, we are not facing a large expense at a writ of mandate in the El Dorado Superior Court to compel the auditor to do his statutory duty. Should it go to the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, you know, that might require retention of experts. But you are facing $10,000 or less to take it to Superior Court.
It's the time also, Robin, that's associated with this, because the fire department is not getting paid. Again, in the eyes of the public, we are having an internal fight. So I don't take this lightly. You know, the other thing that we're doing is we're having an off-site meeting when the auditor is not even present to tell us his side of it. I know he was there last time. I know we asked him specifically, but it's only fair to just kind of have him in the room as well. I have said my piece, so I'll let my fellow supervisors.
Supervisor McLaughlin?
Thank you, Chair. I'm gonna put the merits aside for a minute. Cut right down to the brass tacks here. The issue, for me, in 3 years, I've seen a lot of things come across the dais that we sit on, land use, all kinds of things. This one's unique. It's also very tricky. And once or twice a year, I've got a curious nature to me. When I don't understand how something works, I go and find out. Once or twice a year, I get a LexisNexis, and it usually helps me. It's a legal research tool, and it's very helpful. There wasn't a lot that helped me with when the Board of Supervisors orders the elected county auditor to pay something he doesn't pay. A little bit of a dead end there. So, this is, it's a very, I won't say uncharted territory, but very, very unique situation here, because what we have in essence is an invoice that came from the fire district. The auditor says, hey, I'm not paying it because it wasn't done right, and our council looked at it and said, well, it's okay, pay it, and he's saying, I'm not paying it. Before I continue, I want to point something about lawyers. And, you know, a lawyer's a Juris Doctorate, and, you know, they have an opinion. It's called practicing law. They practice law. And when I was in college, I took administration of justice. I had to go to court and watch a day of Superior Court, and I saw that a lot of lawyers who said, Your Honor, the law says this and it means this, about half of them were wrong. Just because Pacific Legal or some other lawyer says, well, I read the law and it says this, they're practicing law. The ultimate authority on the definition of a statute or an ordinance or a state law or federal law is a residing judge when it comes to the decision point. And that's why we're having to look at, you know, we have, you know, we have to kind of look at the option of going that route, which this for me is really a last resort, and I'd like to find an option here. Larry, you're saying the Walker decision doesn't apply. I think it does. It's my opinion, but I have a different take than the auditor, where he says the Walker case says we shouldn't pay it. I find the Walker decision finds reason to pay it, because under the Walker case, there was a situation where a district hadn't done their review, and you'll see more money back. And there was, I think it was E or C or D, whatever it was, it said, you know, as long as there's, I forget exactly what it says, but some consistency, that it's relevant, that there is you know, that there's so many processes in government, you know, and they're there for a reason, but in this case right here, whether this department did or didn't follow the letter right down to the T, or did it, which apparently they did do it, but we didn't approve it.
No.
So I don't know that
Missing the
part.
facts.
Sweeney said they didn't.
Hold on, listen. I'm thinking out loud here, I'm not saying this is fact, I'm telling you, I'm just sharing some, going by memory here, okay, I'm not reading off anything. So I'm gonna parcel that aside though. Regardless of all that, this board, the legislative body for the county, has ordered our elected county auditor to make this payment. And apparently at 7:50 a.m. this morning, he is not, or was it 8:10? I forget. 7:50 a.m., I heard that correctly. He has not made this. We're in a very unique situation here. This is very, very tricky. This department wants to get paid for the fire truck. My opinion, they should get paid for their fire department. That's just my opinion. They buy a fire truck with fees. The fees were collected. The purchase of the fire truck was consistent with that process. So, what are our options right here? That's my question. I'll hear from other colleagues here, but I need to know what really are our options. This is unusual here, and that's why I would like to find out what our options are. Larry, do you have something?
I wanted to say, in response to what you just said, first, I don't think Walker does apply, I said this last time, but if it did apply, we could argue what you argued, because you used the example that was in the Walker case. The district had purchased some land
That's right,
with those fees,
correct?
and the litigant wanted the money back, they wanted the district to have sell the land.
Correct.
And the judge said,
No.
no, they don't have to sell the land.
That's right.
The analogous piece here is they bought the fire truck.
So,
I don't believe any judge is gonna make them sell the fire truck and give the money back.
my point is, though, is that although it's land and a fire truck, the framework of the Walker case supports making this payment, so.
But what I wanted to say is, with respect to what Supervisor Frenzen said and is concerned about, the action you take today is to authorize litigation. It doesn't initiate the litigation. Litigation will be initiated by the county counsel's office if we can't reach resolution with the auditor controller.
That really is the end of the, I mean, have we, have communications with the auditor broken down to a point where we have no other option? I mean, for a body of elected officials to sue another elected official to take action that we directed,
Well, you have no.
It's a very strange situation.
To make him do his job.
We already took the action to make the order, so if you're gonna become inconsistent, then we're just sending a message of inconsistency.
It is the district's money. You have the authority to order the auditor to pay it. You ordered the auditor to pay it. If for some reason somebody out there doesn't believe that was a legitimate order, they can take the board to court.
We'll get an answer.
We'll get an answer.
Well,
But the
the
bottom line
district-
is, all the auditor has to do is make the payment.
The district could force this too. So we're gonna be, there's a good potential we'll be facing litigation from the district if we don't give them their money, because I'm sure they see this differently as well. We'll wait to see their action. Supervisor Novosello?
Thank you. I'm gonna take us back to our last discussion we had in here, and that is, what are we as a board? And the whole idea of us being a board is we're lay people, okay? We don't have the expertise to be an attorney. I mean, I know, Mick, I understand where you've seen a lot in action, so have I, and I'm saying the same thing. I've observed the same thing. Attorneys will think one way, and then they'll get hired by somebody else and do a complete turnaround.
But the
Because
attorneys
they're getting
believe,
paid by somebody else.
the attorneys believe though what they're saying is fact of law.
Well, yeah, that's even to be disputed sometimes, but bottom line is, I've seen enough attorneys go both ways, where I think, honestly, what our board needs to decide is, are you going to support our employee, our employees, the one people that we depend on to give us legal advice, and that's county council. And by right, our assistant county counsel. They're both telling us the same thing. That's what they're getting paid to do, is to give us appropriate legal advice. And that's all I have to base my
And saying, wait.
So each time we cut to a different camera or do another take, we'll want to look at the camera for a few seconds and then go into.
And then we're gonna need to do camera 2 with me thanking John for being here and our shaking hands.
Yeah, it'd be good to have both you guys on.
Supervisors has to go to Superior Court to sue or take civil or whatever legal action it is to order. This is very, very, and this, in my opinion, should be the absolute last resort. We have no other options.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. You've said that. You've got a 5th board member here who has been patiently waiting to say something. And I would certainly like to hear from the public.
Yes.
So, rather than us continue, I'd like to hear from the public, and then we'll bring
Yeah,
it back.
I'll wait. I mean,
Take
I've
action.
held till now. Let's hear from the public, but, you know.
Are we getting chippy?
We are.
Bernard, I believe you're first.
Okay,
Let's make it every other.
personally, my whole thing is I believe in following the law. Diamond Springs is my fire department. That's my engine that takes care of me. They have picked me up